Deck building games. Usually when you think of deck building games, you think of games that fit in big boxes, such as the one for Dominion or Thunderstone, but it doesn't have to be. You can have deck building games that fit in very small boxes. Valley of the Kings by AEG is one such game that fits in a box which is the same size as the box for Love Letter. There's such a famous game, chances are that you played it or that you've seen the box at least. That gives you a sense of how small this box is and how small the game is, which also means that the price is low, yet you have a full deck building game in here, and I can tell already it's a pretty smart game and it packs quite a punch for something that fits in such a small box. Valley of the Kings, a deck building game of ancient Egypt. The theme is a little strange. You play the role of an ancient Egyptian who is trying to load up his tomb with all sorts of goods, all sorts of precious items, precious objects, statuettes, sarcophagi, books, because after you're dead you still want to read some stuff. Well, this is the old idea of the Egyptians that after you die you can still enjoy the material goods that you own, that you're buried with. So the player with the tomb stocked with the most goods is the player that is going to win the game. Well, not just a matter of quantity, you also need to collect goods in a certain way, to collect sets of goods. In any case, the player with the richest tomb is going to be the winner of the game. Rulebook, not too long and very clear, very well done. Then you have a section of the box in which you can store the starting decks. Each player at the beginning of the game receives a tomb, a card that indicates the position of the tomb, and you will place the goods in your tomb under that card just to indicate that they are there. You have a player aid, and then you have a starting deck of cards. In traditional deck building fashion, cards have a cost that you need to pay to be able to purchase that card. They have a money value, money that they generate, so you can spend cards to purchase other cards, and then they have an action or actions printed on them, so you can play a card for the money value to purchase other cards, or you can perform the action. In that case, you simply perform the action that is described on the card. And this is the set of cards that players start with. They shuffle their initial deck, they draw 5 cards, and that's the standard hand of cards. Now, in deck building games, you purchase cards, right? So what cards are you going to purchase? Cards from this deck here, which is called the stock. Actually, this is 2 decks. A deck of cards with a 3 printed at the bottom, and a deck of cards with a 2 printed at the bottom. You shuffle each deck separately at the beginning of the game, then you place the 2 deck on top of the 3 deck to form a single deck. In this way, there is a certain sense of progression. Cards towards the bottom of the deck are more expensive and they have more powerful effects, and effects that specialize in entombing things, which is particularly useful in this game. When you set up the game, you flip a card face up, and that forms the first card of the Boneyard, which is the area of the game where you place cards that do not come back into the game. And then here's the cool stuff. You draw 6 cards, which you use to form a pyramid. Oh, what a clever way of capturing the Egyptian theme. Let's call it a triangle. Maybe a pyramid is an ambitious way of calling it. And you form a pyramid right there. And there are cards of different colors to indicate different types of goods. For example, the green cards are books, then the statues are light blue, the jars are sort of like light brown, and there are other colors to indicate other things. Red for sarcophagi, and then you also have purple cards, which are unique cards. They don't really belong to sets. They are their own family. So now the game is set up and ready to start. What do you do when it is your turn? Well, you have your hand of 5 cards, which you will play, and you should play them. That's really, really, really the point. How can you play your cards? Well, you can play your cards for their money value, so you can put some of them together to purchase a card. But, tricky thing, when you're purchasing cards, you purchase them from here, but you can purchase a card only from the bottom of the pyramid. So I wouldn't be able to purchase that card there. You may have card effects that allow you to take a card, and when you take a card, then you can take it from wherever you want. But if you're purchasing it, spending money, you can only purchase from the bottom. And when you purchase a card, then the pyramid crumbles, so you readjust the cards so that the cards on top kind of slide towards the bottom. So you may have ways of getting a card that you like by purchasing a card underneath, having it slide down, and then you purchase the card that you want, because you can purchase as many cards as you want and you can afford in a single turn. So you can do that, manipulate the pyramid in that way, dragging towards the bottom the cards that you want to purchase. Also, you may have game effects that allow you to swap cards in the pyramid, and that again may place a card in a position where you can purchase it. But there is that spatial aspect to it, which I pretty much enjoy. So you can purchase a card, which is added to your discard pile, traditional deck building fashion. You can play a card to execute the action. For example, in this case, I could swap 2 cards in the pyramid, or I could sacrifice a card in the pyramid. Sacrificing a card means to transfer a card to the boneyard. Another thing that you can do once per turn is to entomb a card, which is you choose a card from your hand and you place it in your tomb, under your tomb. The identity and number of cards that you have entombed is public knowledge. People need to be able to see that, including yourself. You really need to keep an eye on what you have down there. This is the basic idea. Play cards for money or for actions. Place one of them per turn under your tomb, and you're done. At the end of your turn, you discard the cards that you still have in your hand and you haven't used. You rebuild the pyramid, filling up any gap that may have been left, and then you draw a new hand of cards. If you did not mess with the pyramid at the end of your turn, you still need to remove a card from there and to adjust the pyramid and to rebuild it. This is because the deck of cards is also the countdown clock for the game. The game is over when the deck of cards of the stock is exhausted and the pyramid is empty and all players have taken the same amount of turns. At that point, you count points. Important thing, yes, you can only entomb 1 card per turn, as a standard action, but there are many game effects, especially later in the game, that will allow you to entomb cards, sometimes from the pyramid directly, sometimes from their hand, from your discard pile, a lot of effects. And you pretty much are trying to entomb as many cards as possible. That means you need to find a balance between game effects and amounts of money that allow you to acquire cards from the pyramid, and game effects allow you to entomb a lot of cards. Because if you have a very thick deck with the most awesome cards in it and you don't have any in your tomb, then you don't score points, or you don't score enough points. If you entombed a lot of cards, you have a lot of points waiting there for you, but maybe now you have a weak deck. That means that an opponent that found a better balance there is going to be more effective. So right there already there is a very interesting aspect to this game. That is, you need to eliminate your own cards to score points, and that means you need to find the balance between what you can afford to put there and not to be able to use anymore, and what is still in your deck. I like that balance, that level of decisions there. I also like how you can manipulate the cards that you can purchase. Another thing that is very important to do is to do a lot of backstabbing. How do you do that? Not so much directly. There are effects that affect the opponent directly, but the way you really mess up with your opponents, what really makes this game not just a deck building game, which is multiplayer solo, what allows you to really annoy your opponents is eliminating cards from here, stealing cards, sacrificing cards, getting cards out of the pyramid, cards that the opponent will want. To understand what I mean by this, we need to talk about final scoring. When the game is over, you score the cards. The initial cards are scored, very simple. Each of them is worth a victory point. Unique cards, the purple ones, have a value printed at the bottom, so you simply score whatever the value for that card is. That's simple. Then you have the cards that are color-coded and are not purple, so every other color card in the game, and those cards belong in sets. Again, the books, the statues, the jars, and so on and so forth. How do you score those? In a slightly different way than the unique cards or the starting cards. You score them by sets. That means you will score all your green cards together, all of your light blue cards together, and so on and so forth. Within each color that is within each set, you can only score unique cards. So for example, I had 2 statues of Anubis here. Well, I'm going to score only 1 because I can score only unique cards. 2 statues of Osiris, I can only score 1. So actually, if this is the situation for me, I'm scoring 3 cards for the yellow, for the light blue set, and 3 cards also for the book set, for the green set. Let me add another card just to give you more variety in scoring situations. Here we go. This is another one that is not represented. So I'm scoring 4 for green and 3 for light blue. What do? You take the number of cards that you're scoring in a set, you square that number. So 3 times 3 is 9. I have 9 points here. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 points. So for each set you score in that way, you total together the points that you score for each set plus the points for starting cards and for unique cards. And at the end, guess what? The player with the highest scores is the winner. And now I guess that you get to see how and why messing with your opponent can be so effective. If the opponent has 5 cards in a set and you manage to prevent the opponent from getting the 6th card, that's a huge difference in points. It's the difference between 5 times 5, 25, and 6 times 6, 36. You are depriving the opponent of 11 points just by doing one of many possible effects that will prevent the opponent from getting that card. So you kind of need to keep track of what the opponents are doing. You really need to do that. That requires a little bit of mnemonics. You have to pay attention. You can play the game in a much more light-hearted way, especially if your opponent does the same. But to be very effective, you need to keep an eye on what the opponents are doing, and also have specific plans on what you can try to specialize in certain types of cards, in certain types of sets that you're trying to build. I like this idea. I like how the scoring works, and especially how the scoring affects the way in which players play, the level of interaction that can cause. Yes, that will result in direct attrition, direct friction. You are really stealing good stuff from the opponents. Maybe you don't even need that stuff, but you need the opponent not to have it. So you have that confrontational aspect there, but not a huge one, not one that will break friendships, I believe. So you have that scoring aspect, which I like very much. You have that nice balancing element that you have to keep in mind between what you are storing for scoring and what you're keeping for effects. You have the spatial aspect. All of these mechanical aspects of the game I like very much. I like the art. The art is so nice. Look at it. Just great art. The cards appear to be very durable. So from the point of view of the components, nothing to complain about. From the point of view of the mechanics, nothing to complain about. This is a fun game. This is a game that has many layers of decisions, many challenges in terms of things that you need to think about, you need to keep track of, and again, interaction among players, which you do not always find in deck building games, is definitely an aspect here, is definitely a component of the game, and may lead to some take that moments and also to some big laughs around the table when, yes, some of those take that moments happen. What a good game, and what a surprise for a game that packs in such a small box and travels so light. This is going to be my travel deck building game of choice, that's for sure. This is one you can just keep with you, and voila, presto, you can set up a very smartly done deck building game in no time. It is easy to teach. For somebody who doesn't know the game, well, the first game will take a while because the players need to familiarize themselves with the effects and with the consequences of the effects and what the effects really mean and can do for you. But this is something you have in any and every deck building game, so that's not exactly a factor. In conclusion, Valley of the Kings really impressed me. I think this is a smart game, a nice game. It costs very little for what you get. Well, it costs less than most games anyways, but for what you get, I think this is really a nice investment. It looks nice, it plays nice, it doesn't cost much. Definitely 2 big thumbs up from me for Valley of the Kings. Smart deck building game, fun to play, just good stuff, good product, good game experience. I liked it.